Hi everyone, Jill Mathis here with another video for Photography Concentrate. Love and inspiration, the two things that keep us going and growing and striving. Now, I've been photographing for over 30 years now. For the record, most of those years were spent working professionally, but I remember well the early years when I never walked out of the house without a camera and anything in my field of vision radiated inspiration. My dog, my parents, the vast Texas landscape where I grew up, my feet, anything was food for film in those days. I believe most beginning photographers are like that. For one thing, there is an awe to creating something, a photograph, out of nothing. That moment you just snap no longer exists. There's almost a giddiness to that act of creation, almost as much fun as a kid with a box of crayons and a big pad of paper. Another thing is, in those early days, we are testing the technical waters of our cameras and figuring out what we can do with them, what feels right to us, what looks good to us, and basically we're just learning the ropes. It's not relevant whether you are learning photography in school or on your own. This process can last a few years. It's sort of a honeymoon phase during which you go through something similar to basically any love affair. The early times when everything is new and nothing doesn't feel right. All your photographs are a delightful discovery. Then, after that, we all sort of move on to the next phase, where everything is still great, but you're starting to have some preferences in the direction the relationship is going. Well, I'd call this the dating phase. You know, you've been to the museum, you've gone on a picnic with friends, you've maybe been to a ball game, and you start to maybe lean more toward going to ball games, let's say, than museums. Well, in photography, it's probably equivalent to after taking photos, let's say, of all your friends. It's only later, as you're looking at the images, that you realize that you actually had much more fun taking photographs of their dogs, and the photographs were a lot better. So now you're sort of developing a slight proclivity for animals over people, but it's all still good. As you all know, if this all was just an infatuation without any real substance, then the whole lovely but brief story comes to an end. If, instead, it's a serious love affair, then the next steps are usually about how to build on all your discoveries up until now, how to incorporate them into your life, and how to keep the fires burning. Maybe not with all the sparks and snaps of the early days, but with an intense and steady heat that goes on and on. So, to help fan the flames, here are 5 things that I found that will help you stay inspired. If you're just snapping photos of pretty flowers and pretty landscapes and pretty people without stopping to look a little deeper into why you think they're interesting, you'll end up with a lot of really nice photographs that don't really tie into each other and have no real substance. Pretty people and pretty photos without any substance get boring after a while. You're not growing, you're not challenging yourself, and you're not staying inspired. In the end, you'll start looking for other outlets outside of photography for your creativity. This actually goes hand in hand with the first tip, but I'm referring more to those of you who are enamored with the technical side of things more than the actual intrinsic value of a photo. You're going to narrow down your audience quite a bit to a basic few if all you're really concerned about is the how. If all you find yourself talking about is how you were able or with what lens and at what setting you got that photo, then you will probably continue to make images that, while in focus and well lit, lack the power to inspire you or your viewer. For both of these tips, a way to start training yourself to reach that next level is to ask yourself while you're photographing, what am I actually looking for? Am I looking for that gleam in a dog's eye that says he knows more than most people give him credit for? Am I looking for that elusive moment when the sun crests the horizon and for an instant everything is transpired into something otherworldly, making life just a little bit more hopeful? For us creative types, there is some truth that we are a lot like children. So, treat yourself as both the kid and the adult. As the adult, recognize a job well done and give yourself praise. And inversely, as the kid, bask in that praise. Feel how good it is to hear the words, "great work." As the adult, know when to recognize sloppy work and give constructive criticism. Your inner child has to start to learn to accept that criticism, no matter how hard you want to blame it on something or someone else. Take all the credit for a great photo and take all the blame for a bad one. I hear way too often phrases like, well, the light wasn't right, or I wish that pole hadn't been there, or this would have been better if. When you stop making excuses, which is kid behavior, and start saying things like, the light wasn't right, but next time I'll wait until it is. Or instead of wishing that pole away, you say to yourself, next time I'll pay closer attention to the surroundings. That is when you start to grow as a photographer, which ensures you stay inspired. It's no fun having someone say they don't really like your work, but before you seek out feedback on a photo, first know how you really feel about it. Don't let someone else decide for you. If you're on the fence about a certain image, try and figure out why before you show it to someone else. My husband, who is also an artist, is my go-to critic. But before I show him anything, I have already identified why I like a photo or what elements I'm having trouble with. If you just get a blanket statement from someone without having your own opinions, then it's more than likely you'll be swayed, oftentimes in the wrong direction, by what they think. Asking someone's opinion doesn't mean seeking out only positive comments, but nor does it help to get unfounded negative feedback. So choose your critic wisely, and to stay inspired, be your own critic first, and ask for a second opinion only after you're established your own. I remember years ago someone passing some of my photos as I was collecting them from the drying rack at school and saying they'd already known those were mine. Now, I knew that was a compliment, but I didn't figure out really why until I started working for Ralph Gibson. Seeing him work through contact sheets helped me to start to see those little details that make a difference when picking a photo. He's often quoted as saying, in order to have a visual signature, I believe it's important that the photographer wants one very badly. They must want their pictures to look different from everybody else's. Now, every famous photographer has a unique visual signature of their own, and it's not by accident. They've spent a lot of time not just photographing, but spending a serious amount of time looking at their work. They also have a vast visual vocabulary that they work from and compare to, made from constantly studying their contemporaries, the masters, and other art forms. By doing this, you can eliminate the risk of banality in your work. Nothing will kill off inspiration faster than when you take a photo and then see later that it has already been done 1,000 times in the same way. Everyone has a different way of looking at things, so work at portraying what you perceive through your photographs. Make an effort to visualize things in a unique way and capture them. So let's sum up what we went over. And at any point in time, reach out and let me know if you have certain things you do to help you stay inspired. Now, number one was create a basis for your relationship with your photos based on something concrete, not just the superficial things. What I mean by this is base your reasons why you go out to shoot on things like, for example, a particular subject you're pursuing, or base it on even a type of emotion you're trying to capture or portray, be it euphoric or sad, or maybe a study of shadows or light. Base it on anything that holds your attention even when you're not photographing, which is actually a sure sign you found a good base for your photography. Tip number two was, as I mentioned, an extension really of the first tip, and it was all about thinking of the why, not the how, you're photographing. If you've gotten into the habit of always wanting to make evident your technical prowess and command of photographic lingo, then I urge you to take a step back and start giving your actual photos some growing room. I'm guessing if you let your photos talk to you, you'll find that your subconscious was working behind the scenes a bit, and you'll be able to figure out the actual why, since you already know the how, behind your work. That is a surefire way to get you sustainably connected and inspired to keep getting out there with your camera. Now, the thing to take away from these two tips is to remember, if your work doesn't hold your attention, it's certainly not going to hold anyone else's. Tip number three is a really big one for me. Now, I've taught a lot of workshops and looked at a lot of work, and it's disheartening to hear excuses when someone shows me a photo. I would much rather hear how they learned from what happened with that particular photo. So definitely step up and take credit for a great photo, but even more so, it's so important to learn from a bad one instead of making excuses for it. Inspiration is fed when we learn from both the good and the bad. Since we're talking about good and bad photos, tip number four is related to number three, since it's important to understand and know why you think a photo is good or bad. It's important to develop this skill without a lot of input from outside critics. If you spend time developing a relationship with your work, you will be your own best critic. Learning to trust and rely on yourself will give you immeasurable confidence, and nothing can stop you when you're confident. Now, the most important takeaway from tip 5 is the importance of developing a visual vocabulary, even before you develop a visual signature. In order to stand out from the crowd, you have to develop your own particular look, which is your visual signature. But if you aren't familiar with what's out there, then you're just going to risk taking photos already done. So keep looking at what's out there every chance you get. And if you put the previous 4 tips to use, you'll find your own voice in no time, which will be your biggest advantage and the best way to always stay inspired. Well, I hope you enjoyed this short video. Now get out there and be inspired and be inspiring too. Be sure to let me know in the comments on Facebook if you have any questions, and I'll be seeing you in the next video.